What is neurodivergence, and what's the difference between describing someone as autistic or having autism?
And what are the challenges of Asperger's syndrome?
This is Enable, the Disability Podcast, where we'll share stories, experiences, support, resources, and more for people with disabilities and different abilities. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. My name is Jeff Herbert.
And my name is Kurt Hower. We're talking with Joe Cittadino of the Central New York Autism Society. Thank you for joining us.
Joe, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experiences growing up.
My name is Joseph Cittadino. I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the time, what's now labeled as high-functioning autism, when I was very young, but that I was almost like a baby, really. And then later on in my life, around 10 years of age or so, I was maybe a little younger, maybe a little older. Memory's fuzzy on that. I was also diagnosed with ADHD. I had, due to a lot of support growing up, due to the early diagnosis that was very beneficial to me. Going up through elementary all the way through high school, I had a one-on-one aide that would help me through school, and because of that, I was a very good student. I was in the top 25 of my graduating high school class. Eventually went on to OCC and then Lemoyne for my college education, and after that, couldn't necessarily find a job in my field, so I had to kind of get any job I could at the time because money is a needed thing to survive. So I ended up working a few customer service jobs, eventually ended up working for TCG Player locally because they were a company that I was a customer of, and things there eventually became more corporate and didn't work out for me. So now I find myself at Upstate University Hospital, where I am currently working in the cafe, but I'm in the process of applying for a job in patient transport, which is why I actually ended up wanting to work at Upstate in the first place, to get involved with that.
Joe, I'm curious about what it was like, especially for your family, when you were first diagnosed with Asperger's.
When I was first diagnosed, I was too young to remember because I was just a little toddler, really. But I can share about when I was a little bit older what it was like. When I was a lot younger, not as many people were being diagnosed. It was kind of a strange thing. So my mom had to do a lot of reading and a lot of research, but she always made me feel encouraged about it. She never once made me feel like I couldn't do anything. When I was little, she would often take me out into the community. She wouldn't keep me shut in. She would sometimes kind of put me in situations that would make me a little uncomfortable, but she was doing it to kind of get me comfortable with those places. And as a result, I became comfortable with them. Through the exposure, I learned how to deal with them. And that was something that she did. She never let my label have her treat me as any lesser. And she always treated me as any other human being with respect and dignity, but there were some challenges, of course, and when she had to deal with those, she leaned on other people. She had the person that diagnosed me, she would go to, I forget the exact doctor's name, but she would go to her, she would go to other professionals, and she would always rely on the knowledge that she had built up through doing her part.
I have a follow-up question. I've heard the term meeting someone on their level or communicating with someone on their level, especially as it pertains to autism and Asperger's. Have you heard that term before? And what might that mean to you?
Yes, I have heard that term before. Autism is a spectrum. You've met one person with autism and you've met one person with autism. There are some people who are very, very high functioning, the Elon Musks and Einsteins and Temple Grandins of the world. There are some people who are a lot lower functioning, who might even be nonverbal, and you might have to communicate with them in a completely different way. Meeting someone on their level communication-wise is understanding where they fall on the spectrum from Temple Grandin or Elon or Einstein to the nonverbal individual or anywhere in between, and communicating with them in a way that they can understand and that makes them feel comfortable based on where they fall in the spectrum of ability.
Thank you.
I really liked what you said about, your your mom encouraging you to go out and be open about you and your needs. That was something that my parents always did for me as well, growing up as someone who was profoundly hard of hearing. So I always had to, talk to the teachers and introduce myself and ask for extra help or an FM unit or notes, anything like that. So it's always important to know that, people out there can get help, but it's always great when we have a family or other people that are helping support us on the journey as well. For you, Joe, I'm curious, can you help explain the difference, or if you have a preference, between describing someone as autistic or as a person with autism?
For me, I prefer to say that I'm a person with autism just because of the fact that when you say I am autistic, you're saying that I am my autism. My autism is me. When you say that I have autism, you're saying it is part of me, but it doesn't define me. It's not the sole thing that is me. Whereas if I am autistic, that's what I am. That is me. As opposed to I have autism, it's part of me, it's part of who I am, but it's not the only part of me. It's not the only thing that defines me. And I think that would apply to anyone with autism.
That's true, and it's true for other people too. I mean, I'm hard of hearing. I'm mostly deaf, and I proudly call myself Deaf Jeff, but it's not the only thing that I am. So I am a person who is deaf, but I'm also a person with hearing loss. And, it's great to point out that people should be respectful of how another person prefers to be referred to and to address them that way.
Yeah, Joe, the Autism Society has done a lot of great work with raising awareness about autism in particular. But what are some other ways that they help others with neurodivergence?
They do a lot of services with children. They have a summer camp and working with them to provide aid and services and help to make them more inclusive and more welcoming to children on the spectrum. They have programs like a ride a bike program. They do all sorts of work with a lot of work with the younger ones to really help them get through during the school year as well. I am also what I'm mostly part of is a social group for adults called on the spectrum that they offer called the A Team, where we meet and we form events and go do things out in the community. Kind of what I talked about before. How my mom would kind of put me out in the community when I was young. With the A Team, we go do community events, we bond, and it's facilitated the Kelberman Center, but the CNY Autism Society has a hand in it as well. They help us form friendships and connections with other individuals on the spectrum, and I've made several lifelong current friends from that group.
That's great. What about, you were talking about helping people get through. And one of the things I'm learning about autism is sensory issues. Could you talk a little bit about that?
There are different ones for every person with autism, but every person with autism has them. For me, when I was very little, like the sound of the vacuum cleaner going on would just freak me out. Eventually I got desensitized to that, but there's still things to this day. As an example, certain food textures will very much bother me, and I can't eat certain foods because of the texture. Things that are like very mushy or like a slime, I don't necessarily like. I have sensory issues with that. For some people, it can be fabrics and clothing. One for me when I was little, I couldn't wear pants with a button on them for years, and it took my middle school drama teacher, a great man, helped me get through middle school, not survive without him. In the school play, for a part I had to wear jeans in the first time of my life, and he's the one who pushed me to do it, and I did it, and I eventually got used to it through that. But when I was a child, it was elastic waist all the time. And there's all different issues. It's different for each person on the spectrum. Some other people might be affected by lights. The big one is fluorescent lighting can mess with a lot of us. Or loud noises, large crowds, being in the middle of packed with a lot of people. I have a good friend on the spectrum. He can't be in a large crowd because the sensory overload will be too much if he's surrounded by too many people.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. This is Enable, the Disability Podcast. Please follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Next, we'd like to discuss enabling friendship. Even when it feels like it, you're not alone. We're not defined solely by the things that we can't do, when there's so many things that we can do.
Yeah, and we'd love to know more about what your life is like, Joe, and what do you like to do outside of work? How do you find people to connect with socially? Tell us about that.
There's a lot of hobbies that I have. I like a lot of nerdy stuff, as a lot of people on the spectrum do. I'm into certain video games. I'm into a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPGs like that. I play Magic the Gathering, which is a card game. I'm not going to go into the rules of that here, very complex, but I find friends, well, partly through the A team that I mentioned before. A lot of my physical, real world friends that live around me are friends that I've met through the A team. We share similar interests. The A team kind of gets us together in a room, and we get talking to different people to kind of find out about them. The A team encourages this. Through that, I find people that share interests, and we become friends through the A team. That's one way. Another way is through looking for communities, especially online, but you can do this in the physical world if you know what you're doing as well, that are geared towards your special interests. So, for example, the Magic the Gathering thing I mentioned, there's stores where you can go where you can play card games. We can play the card game and meet people that way in the real world. There's online communities too where you can make online friends by seeking out and looking for communities in different pieces of media you're interested in, or games you're interested in, or whatever your interests might be. If you're interested in sports, there's sports communities you can go to. And it's not just online. There is communities like that in the real world too that you can, like I mentioned, not just those stores, but if you're my friend Joel, for example, he's a writer. He's on the spectrum. He is part of a writers group, and is the actual physical writers group where he brings his writing and they critique it, and he's made some friends through that. So I think a big one for a lot of people on the spectrum that I think could help them is seeking out those communities that are tailored to their special interests, because they'll find like-minded people there, even if they aren't on the spectrum.
Is that largely through electronic media, social media, or are there other ways of connecting?
Yes, I said there's physical spaces you can go to. It all depends on, like I said, if you're seeking out an area of your special interest. I mentioned Joel's writer group, that's physical. I mentioned my stores where I can go to play the card game and meet people, that's physical. It's a matter of getting out there and looking for places in the real world that you can find people who would share your special interests. There's clubs for train enthusiasts. If you happen to be a person who's really into trains, you can look for a model train club, something of that nature. There are those organizations that exist out there in the real world. It's not just digital. And another thing you can do is just looking for other people on the spectrum. Like I mentioned, the A team is one way, but there's other organizations that have ways to connect you with people on the spectrum, and I think that like-minded people are good friends to have. A lot of my friends are also on the spectrum.
That's great. Joe, you talked a little bit about some, sensory challenges that you have when you're out and about. Do you experience any other challenges when you're going out with friends and family?
Sometimes, yes. Especially, there are certain times when I might come off in conversation as being short and not realize it. There might be something else going on, maybe a sensory thing, maybe something physical going on in my body, and I might come off a certain way in conversation that I don't realize I'm coming off as short or abrupt. And that can sometimes be a challenge. But
we appreciate you not being short and abrupt with us.
Yeah, thank you.
So what do you wish more people knew or understood about you and others with similar experiences?
Well, I think a big thing that I would like more people to understand, this is going to get kind of weird, is there's something that a writer, I forget her name, called Spoon Theory. She was chronically physically disabled, but the Spoon Theory has since been adopted in the larger disability community, including among those of us who are neurodivergent, to be a good metaphor for how we work. And what Spoon Theory is the idea that take the tasks you have throughout a day, whether they be tasks at work, tasks in your household, etc., etc. The non-disabled neurotypical person will have infinite amount of spoons, aka energy, to assign to all those tasks so they can get every task done. But someone who is neurodivergent or physically disabled will only have a limited number of spoons to assign to all those tasks, and they might not have enough spoons on a certain day to get all the tasks they need to get done. This is more of a workplace concern than a social life concern, but it can apply to that too. Is I would like people to be more understanding of difference in ability, of this spoon theory, of the fact that people like us have a difference in ability that might cause us to have to move at a slower pace sometimes. The world is very fast paced. A lot of people are fast, speed, results. And that type of thing doesn't necessarily always work for somebody like us who might have to move a little bit slower. We might like to play Sonic the Hedgehog, but we can't always be Sonic the Hedgehog. Sometimes we gotta be the tortoise, not the hare. People understanding to be patient with us and that we can only sometimes move so quickly is what I'd like most people to understand.
Well said.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you for taking the time to share your stories and experiences. Do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
The one thing I would like to say is that anyone who's listening who is on the spectrum, know that you should just be you. Don't let anyone try and box you in. Don't let anyone try and shut you away. Don't be afraid to go out into the world and be yourself. You will find like-minded people if you are honest with and true about who you are, and take that and share that with the world.
Joe, I'd just like to say this has been very inspiring.
Well said, Joe. Thank you again for joining us. This is Enable the Disability Podcast. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. Please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Please share this podcast with your friends and family so we can share more stories of people with disabilities and different abilities. Thank you.